The man only glanced at the dragon girl, and the very next second, he rushed over and wrapped himself around her leg. He even insisted on competing with her, saying that if he won, she had to grant him one request. The dragon girl was embarrassed and furious, trying to shove him off, but no matter what she did, she just couldn't shake him loose. Left with no other choice, she agreed to settle it with an arm wrestling match. The truth was, the only reason he was acting like this was because the system had given him a mission. As long as he defeated the dragon girl, he would earn a reward and grow stronger. And that man was none other than Ron, a transmigrator who, just a few days ago, still couldn't use magic at all. The moment he arrived in this world, he was sentenced to death for offending a councilman's son. Luckily, right before his execution, he successfully activated the system. He not only slaughtered every guard at the execution ground, but also forced the warden all the way back into his cell before ending him with a single slash. Then the system suddenly detected that the slime in front of him was actually the source of the mana rampage, and extracting its magic could even help the system level up. But Ron hesitated, because one of the prisoners in the cell had once told him that this black slime used to be a witch. Their power had violated the natural order, and that was why they had been punished by the ring of the world. After thinking it over, he still decided to strike. I'm sorry, in your next life, don't become a witch again. But the moment his blade pierced into that pool of black sludge, what he saw left him completely dumbfounded. There was a completely naked girl inside it. He instinctively leaned in, wanting a closer look at her face. But she suddenly opened her eyes and locked gazes with him. Ron's face instantly turned red, and he hurriedly turned around in embarrassment. Sorry, I really didn't mean to do that. In the very next second, she dropped to her knees in front of him, as if she were thanking him for saving her. Ron quickly searched the storage and found a cloak to wrap around her. Then he asked her a few questions about who she was. But she looked dazed, almost like she couldn't speak at all. Ron started to hesitate too, wondering whether he should leave her here and make his escape alone. But then she suddenly reached out and tightly grabbed the corner of his clothes. Her eyes looked so pitiful and helpless, like a kitten that had been abandoned. In that moment, Ron's heart was completely captured by this adorable girl. In the end, he decided to take her with him and leave this place together. The moment he stepped out of the prison, Ron realized that soldiers were already searching the entire city for him. The system immediately warned him that fleeing with the maid would make him far easier to catch, and it even suggested that he abandon her. But Ron refused to accept that advice. Getting to adventure through another world with a beautiful girl was basically every transmigrator's dream. Just as he and Morna were trying to figure out how to slip out of the city, a woman in an elegant blue robe suddenly walked up to them. She introduced herself as Lady Mercury and claimed she could help Ron out of his current crisis, while the system warned him at the same time that she was an extremely powerful humanoid being. Ron figured that since he clearly couldn't beat her, trusting her was his only real option. Then Lady Mercury raised her hand and lightly tapped the wall beside her. In the very next second, an ancient wooden door appeared out of thin air. Ron and Morna followed her inside. After that, they changed into the clean clothes she had prepared for them. From Lady Mercury, Ron learned quite a few things. For one, she possessed the ability to read minds. And as it turned out, his true identity was actually the son of a fallen hero from a destroyed nation. As for the witch who kept clinging to him, her name was Morna. Even though she had remained in that chaotic black slime state for a long time, her consciousness was slowly recovering. The reason Lady Mercury had saved him was because she wanted to make a deal with him. As long as he passed through the door behind her, Ron would be able to leave this dangerous city safely. But beyond that door was a land that had once been prosperous, only to be completely frozen over one day. Ron's mission was to go in, find the real culprit behind the frozen village, and if possible, take that culprit down for good. On top of that, Lady Mercury's true identity was that of a duchess of the Norman Empire. If Ron succeeded, she would grant him the title of lord and give him a piece of legal territory he could truly call his own within the empire. At the same time, the system issued him a brand new mission. Find the culprit behind the frozen village, and the reward would be a custom-made weapon that made the temptation twice as irresistible. So Ron accepted the mission without the slightest hesitation. Lady Mercury smiled and reached out to shake his hand. Then let's consider the contract sealed. And just like that, Ron and Morna began their adventure together. What Ron didn't know, however, was that Lady Mercury had already figured out the secret that he was a transmigrator. She even discussed him with her pet little silver dragon. On top of that, she deliberately sent a lively child to assist him. But the silver dragon couldn't make sense of it at all. Why would she send the one child who hated humans more than anyone else? Meanwhile, Ron and Morna had already made it to the outskirts of Winterless Town. Under his breath, Ron complained that this snowy place was freezing to the bone, and there wasn't even a trace of life anywhere around them. Just then, Morna gently tugged on his sleeve and pointed toward the distance. Standing quietly in the storm ahead was a silver-haired girl. She wore an elegant-made dress, white garter stockings, and carried herself with the kind of cold, untouchable aura that kept everyone at arm's length. Ron's instincts went off immediately. Who the hell dressed like that in weather this brutal? Either something was wrong with her head, where she was strong enough to ignore the cold entirely. He quickly took Maruna's hand and decided to pretend he had seen nothing, planning to walk right past her. But when the girl saw that, she let out a displeased little hum. Then she followed after them with quick, tiny steps. Ron finally turned around and asked, "Miss, who are you exactly? And why are you following us?" That was when he learned that the cold maid's name was Lillian, and that she had been sent by Lady Mercury to assist him. Ron immediately let out a relieved breath. You could have said that sooner. But Lillian only stared at him like he was filth and said, "The very thought of voluntarily speaking to a filthy and despicable human is something my body finds difficult to endure. Even if this is Lady Mercury's order, I still have no desire to stand too close to you. My apologies." The next second, Morna suddenly let out a low, rumbling sound at Lillian, her hostility impossible to miss. To Ron's surprise, Lillian responded by giving her an elegant bow. "Good day, Miss Witch." Watching that, Ron couldn't help grumbling to himself. This difference in treatment was way too obvious. The way she treated Morna was clearly much better than the way she treated him. But right then, the system suddenly issued a warning. The being in front of him was a powerful dragon. Ron had never expected that this sharp-tongued maid was actually a dragon. Sure, she was obviously looking down on him right now. But from another angle, having a dragon as a temporary teammate would make their survival odds shoot through the roof. But Lillian seemed to sense exactly what he was thinking and instantly stepped several paces back to widen the distance between them. Under her breath, she muttered, that filthy and revolting feeling just got even stronger. And just like that, their formation turned into something bizarre, with Lillian leading in front while Ron and Morna followed behind her. Along the way, Lillian noticed that Ron was constantly looking after Morna, and the two of them clearly seemed very close. That made her genuinely curious about how the two of them had even met in the first place. Ron gently patted Morna on the head and said, "We used to be cellmates." She only turned back from black sludge into human form not long ago, so she's still slowly recovering. Hearing that, Lillian looked genuinely shocked. You were the one who saved her, and a witch who had already turned into black sludge, actually returning to human form? I've never even heard of such a thing. That's nothing short of a miracle. In this world, witches had always been treated by humans as evil beings. The spells and prayers humans used all came from different symbols. But witches were different. Their power didn't come from any symbol, so humans declared that kind of power unnatural and condemned it as evil. On top of that, witches often lost control of their own power, went berserk, and eventually collapsed into black sludge, which only made humanity even more convinced of that so-called evil. At that point, Lillian's voice turned openly furious. Humans really are foolish. A witch's power clearly comes from the very root of the bicolor world, yet they smear it as evil. And those so-called symbols and gods are nothing more than parasites festering in this world. Then she tilted her head and glanced at Ron. Even if you look sloppy and ugly, I still sincerely thank you for saving a witch. Ron gave a goofy grin. So that counts as praise, right? She immediately turned her head away with a huff. No, don't flatter yourself. While they were talking, the three of them finally reached their destination, the completely frozen Winterless town. Its massive gate was already buried beneath a thick layer of ice. Ron finally asked the question that had been bothering him for a while. If you already knew the culprit was here, why didn't you just go in and deal with it yourselves? Lillian shook her head. We only know that it's somewhere inside, but we don't know what it looks like, nor do we know what it actually is. Not a single person sent in before to find the culprit ever made it back alive. The moment he heard that, Ron immediately realized just how dangerous this trip really was. He instinctively looked Lillian up and down, quietly reassessing the combat power of this dragon maid. Lillian clearly sensed that gaze and looked offended on the spot. Then she warned him in an irritated voice, "Mr. Ron, please don't look at me with such revolting eyes." Ron let out an awkward laugh and carefully asked, "Miss Lillian is coming in with me, right?" What he was really thinking, though, was that having a dragon by his side would make him feel ridiculously safe. To his surprise, Lillian suddenly put on a delicate act. "Whatever are you talking about? I'm merely a fragile maid." Ron instantly lost it. You can shove open a giant iron gate weighing several tons with one hand. So what exactly are you pretending to be fragile for? Lillian let out two awkward little coughs. Then she explained, "This investigation can only be carried out by you personally. My role is only to supervise you. This mission is part of the contract between you and Lady Mercury. Until your task is completed, I, as the supervisor, can't act against the terms of that contract. Miss Witch and I will build a temporary camp here and wait for your return. Don't worry, I'll take good care of her." Hearing that, Ron could only let out a helpless sigh. He gently patted Morna on the head and comforted her in a low voice. "Be good. I'll be back soon." After saying that, Ron stepped into the town alone. But not a single living thing could be seen anywhere on the streets. Just when he was almost ready to give up, he caught a glimpse from the corner of his eye of a white squirrel crouching on a rooftop. It clearly didn't look like an ordinary squirrel. It wasn't just the strange color of its fur. Even its eyes fell off, like the creature had to be connected to this mission somehow. The moment Ron tried to approach it, the squirrel spun around and fled. He immediately broke into a run and chased after it. And just like that, A full-on pursuit broke out between man and squirrel across the empty streets. Unfortunately, that little thing still managed to slip away. Right then, the system issued a notice, telling him that he was currently standing at the edge of a zone where time had fallen into chaos, and that echoes from the past were about to appear around him, so he shouldn't panic. The next second, two blurry black figures appeared before his eyes. The younger one demanded sharply, "What exactly are you trying to do?" The old man answered coldly, "I'm going to freeze this entire region solid. We can't allow the evil god to leave this place." The young man's voice was thick with despair. "Don't you understand? It's already too late." But before he could finish, both phantom figures vanished at the same time. Seeing that, Ron immediately concluded that this old man was most likely the culprit he had come here to find. Too bad he hadn't seen the man's face clearly, or he could have turned around and gone back to report the mission done already. What Ron didn't know was that not far away, outside a nearby house, that very old man was secretly watching him from the shadows. The white squirrel then nimbly leaped onto the old man's shoulder. It let out a series of squeaks, as if it were reporting something back to him. The old man quickly understood what was going on. So another one had come seeking the truth. Time passed fast, and before Ron knew it, evening had already fallen. He had searched all over the town, yet still found nothing truly useful. In the end, he had no choice but to head back first and continue the investigation tomorrow. But the moment Ron stepped out through the town gate, he froze on the spot. What should have been nothing more than a snow-covered forest now had a wooden cabin standing there out of nowhere. For a second, he even wondered whether he had investigated so long that he was starting to hallucinate. Then Lillian showed up carrying a bundle of firewood and gave him the answer. That place had already been turned into their temporary camp. Inside, the cabin had everything: a kitchen, a bathroom, and even a bedroom. And unbelievably, Lillian had built the whole thing herself piece by piece out of wood. She even said it like it was nothing, calling it a basic made skill. As for the layer wrapped around the outside of the house, that was dragon breath, used to block out the freezing wind. Ron had always thought dragon breath meant the kind of attack dragons blasted out from their mouths. But Lillian looked at him with helpless exasperation. "Please don't define dragonkind with your shallow human common sense. For us, every ability we wield can be called dragon breath. And by the way, that Lady Mercury you met earlier is a dragon too." That immediately sparked Ron's curiosity. Then if you and Lady Mercury are both dragons, why could she blend perfectly into human society while you hate humans this much? It was obvious Lillian didn't want to answer that question. But what truly surprised her was that Ron showed absolutely no fear toward dragons. After all, humans usually reacted to unknown races and unfamiliar beings with fear and rejection. Ron, on the other hand, looked genuinely confused. Why would I be scared of dragons? If anything, knowing you're a dragon just makes you feel way more reliable. Lillian looked at him, and something complicated flickered through her eyes. Under her breath, she murmured, "What a strange human." In truth, though, she was already thinking to herself that Lady Mercury had sent her here to monitor this transmigrator in the first place. If Ron ever used the system to wreak havoc, she would kill him immediately. But after spending an entire day with him, the only thing she had really confirmed was that he was an oddball. She had not seen any truly dangerous behavior from him yet. So Lillian decided to keep watching him for a while longer. Outside, the world was still bitterly cold, but inside the cabin, it felt warm enough to be another world entirely. The moment Ron came back, Morna started gesturing at him with her hands, clearly trying to say something. But Ron couldn't understand her at all. Just then, Lillian walked over carrying a cup of hot water and explained in an even tone, "Miss Morna wants you to drink some hot water and warm yourself up." Ron was stunned on the spot. "How do you know that?" So it turned out that Lillian, as a white dragon, could read minds too. And if she could already understand what Morna meant, that only proved Maruna's consciousness was slowly coming back. That realization made Ron's heart warm up a little. He reached out and gently patted Morna on the head. "Thank you." The way she looked so obedient and sweet was honestly way too adorable. It kept making Ron's heart skip a beat. Not long after that, Lillian prepared dinner. It was 2 sizzling hot steaks that looked so good they could make anyone hungry on sight. Ron took a bite and found the meat unbelievably tender and juicy, with a rich aroma that instantly made him curious. "What kind of meat is this?" he asked. Lillian answered in a calm, matter-of-fact tone, "Meat from my tail." The moment he heard that, Ron suddenly felt like the dragon meat in his mouth had lost all its flavor. Right after that, he couldn't help worrying about whether anything had happened to her tail. But Lillian calmly explained, "Don't worry. For me, cutting off that little bit of meat is about the same as you humans scraping off a patch of skin. With a dragon's recovery ability, it'll heal completely in less than an hour." Morna, who had no idea what she was eating, happily ate away. All Ron could do was silently pray that she would never find out what kind of meat it really was. After dinner, Lillian asked, "So how did today's investigation go? Did you find a culprit?" Hearing that, Ron let out a sigh and told her everything that had happened during the day. The moment she heard it, Lillian looked at him in disappointment. "So Lady Mercury's assignment really was too difficult for you after all? If you truly can't complete it, I'll report that back to Lady Mercury." Hearing that instantly fired up Ron's refusal to lose. "Who says I can't do it? I'm going back to keep investigating tomorrow. But Lillian started talking with that same sarcastic edge again. Oh, really? Then I suppose I'll stay right here tomorrow as well and wait for your good news. Her attitude made Ron grind his teeth in frustration. Just wait and see. Then, all of a sudden, the system issued a new mission. Defeat the maid who humiliated you and crush her pride. Reward upon completion. Once the host falls asleep, the system will activate an enhanced training function. Ron almost thought he had read it wrong. It wanted him to defeat a dragon? Was this some kind of joke? Was that even remotely possible? But if he failed to complete the mission, he would suffer the system's punishment. So after thinking it over for a moment, Ron clenched his teeth and made up his mind. In the very next second, he slammed his hand on the table and shouted, "Miss Lillian, I want to compete with you. Let's settle this with arm wrestling. Do you dare?" Lillian froze on the spot for a second. Then a teasing smile slowly curled across her lips. "Challenge me? You got some nerve." 10 minutes later, Ron had already lost 10 times in a row. Forget winning. He couldn't even see the slightest chance of taking a single round. At this rate, there was no way he was escaping the system's punishment. In the middle of that despair, an utterly shameless idea suddenly popped into his head. In the end, he only needed to win once. So in the very next second, Ron lunged forward and wrapped himself around Lillian's leg again, shamelessly starting to beg. "Big sister Lillian, could you just lose to me once? Just once. Please, I'm begging you." The sudden contact made Lillian's face heat up, and her heart started racing as she tried to shove him off. "That's disgusting. I refuse to indulge your childish obsession with winning." But Ron clung to her leg like his life depended on it and kept pleading, "I'll run errands for you, do housework, anything you want." Red-faced and furious, Lillian beat him up again, and only then did she let out a long breath. "Those are already things I, as a maid, am supposed to do. Stop fooling around already. I'm busy." Even so, he kept staring at her shamelessly. "If you don't let me win once, I'm just going to keep hugging your leg and begging." Lillian quickly realized something was off. He clearly knew the gap in strength between them was ridiculous, yet he was still obsessing over getting a win. Was this because of the system again? Ron just gave her a sly grin and pressed even harder. "If you still say no, I'll cling to you all day." Left with no better option, Lillian finally gave in. "Fine, but let's make this clear first. If I arm wrestle you again and you win, you'll stop bothering me after that, correct?" The second he heard that, Ron lit up and immediately planted his hand on the table. "Of course. I keep my word." Lillian then sat down across from him with her usual elegant poise and said, "Very well. Then I'll let you win once." But in the next instant, her wrist suddenly slammed hard to the right. With a deafening bang, the sturdy wooden table shattered into pieces on the spot. Even Morina beside them jumped in fright. As for Ron, the pain in his arm was so intense it felt like it was about to explode. A second later, he roared, "Lillian, you did that on purpose, didn't you?" Yet Lillian put on the most innocent expression imaginable. "Mr. Ron, you already won, so why are you still being so harsh toward a fragile maid?" That instantly made Ron want to rush at her and argue it out on the spot. But right then, the system notification suddenly rang out. "Mission complete. Defeat the white dragon, Maid Lillian. Next time, please win with your actual strength." Looking at the message, Ron could only mutter under his breath, "Easy for you to say. She's a dragon." Meanwhile, Morina was still by his side, gently blowing on his aching hand. At that point, Lillian politely reminded him, "It's getting late, Mr. Ron. You should get some rest. I've already prepared your bed in advance, so if you need anything, please don't hesitate to call for me." But sitting there on the bed, Ron couldn't help feeling uneasy. The enhanced training would begin in his sleep, and he had no idea what was waiting for him on the other side. Once he finally fell asleep, his consciousness was indeed dragged into a strange space filled all around with clocks that looked as though they had come from some ancient age. Standing before him was a masked man, who slowly opened his mouth and said, "This is your dream. Welcome to the bicolor world, Ron, the 100th transmigrator." That was when Ron learned that the masked man before him was actually the creator of the system, a being known as the 10 Sages. Inside him existed 10 different sage consciousnesses at the same time, and Ron himself was the 100th transmigrator to be chosen. The problem was that the 99 before him had all died and ended up as nothing more than failed products. The second he heard that, Ron's anger flared up. "So you dragged us into reincarnation in this world for no reason, used us as lab rats, and the moment we died, you just labeled us failures." Even in the face of his outrage, the 10 sages answered with calm patience. "The tasks given to you by the system are no different from trials meant to temper ordinary people. Whether someone is nothing more than a rough, worthless stone, or a treasure capable of shining brilliantly, is something only strength can decide." Hearing that, Ron finally understood. "So if I want to survive, I have to keep completing missions and make myself stronger. From here on out, everything depends on the system." After the 10 sages left, the system officially began Ron's enhanced training. It transported him into an isolated space, and the entire training process would be completed while he slept. Then a system window popped up, clearly displaying the training details. Training name, Warrior Initiation. Training content, survive a dragon attack within a time limit. Failure carries no punishment, but if the training isn't completed, the host won't be allowed to leave. Before Ron had any chance to brace himself, an enormous black dragon suddenly appeared behind him, its vertical pupils burning with golden fire as they locked tightly onto him. The sight froze Ron from head to toe. He never expected the system to actually go this far. In the next instant, the black dragon unleashed blazing dragon breath at him without the slightest restraint, and Ron's mind went completely blank as he instinctively threw himself into a desperate escape. Because every injury suffered in that place was completely real, and the system had no power to bring the dead back to life. In the end, the black dragon suddenly opened its jaws wide and lunged straight at him. With one bite, it tore off one of his arms, sending blood spraying everywhere. Ron let out a scream so sharp and miserable it could have torn through the sky. But in the very next second, he was suddenly back in reality. Only then did he realize that the arm that had just been ripped off was perfectly intact, and there wasn't a single wound anywhere on his body. At first, Ron thought everything that had just happened must have been nothing more than an unbelievably vivid nightmare. But the system immediately sent him a notification. Congratulations, host. This training has been completed. All injuries sustained during the training have been restored. Physical abilities have improved significantly. Current strength evaluation, warrior first rank. At the very least, you no longer need to worry about getting casually mugged on the street. Ron was honestly speechless. Power at this level still felt ridiculously weak. After that, the three of them sat down and started eating breakfast together. But right in the middle of the meal, Lillian suddenly asked, "Mr. Ron, did you do anything strange last night?" The moment he heard that, Ron's heart skipped a beat. "Did I do something?" Lillian narrowed her eyes and recalled it seriously. "All I know is that strange moaning kept coming from your room all night." Then she fixed him with a sharp stare and pressed him directly. "You didn't do anything inappropriate to Miss Morna, did you?" That question scared Ron so badly, he spat out a mouthful of soup on the spot. He frantically waved his hands and denied it. "What kind of nonsense are you even thinking about? Nothing like that happened." But Lillian clearly didn't believe him at all. Ron could only hurry to explain himself. "Sure, sharing a room with a beautiful girl might make things feel a little dangerous, but I'm still a man with principles and self-control." Lillian answered in an obviously half-hearted tone. Fine. I'll pretend to believe you for now." Still, she followed it up with a warning. "But instead of wasting your mind on that, I suggest you focus on the real job and finish what Lady Mercury assigned to you as soon as possible. After all, no one can guarantee that the culprit will just keep staying in this town forever." So Ron entered the town once again to continue his investigation. This time, though, he had learned his lesson. He placed pine cones as bait out in an open patch of snow. Sure enough, that strange white squirrel took the bait almost immediately. Just as it was happily getting ready to make off with the food, Ron yanked the trap rope, and a large net dropped down and caught it completely. Seeing that, Ron was overjoyed. "Now let's see where you think you're running off to." He pulled the white squirrel out of the net and interrogated it with narrowed eyes. "Little guy, the strange stuff happening here has something to do with you, doesn't it?" But the squirrel struggled wildly in his hands, and in the next second it sank its teeth hard into the web of his hand. The pain almost made Ron let go right there. But just then, an old man suddenly appeared behind him and said in a pitiful voice, "Could you forgive it? If not, I'll have no one left to keep me company." That unexpected voice instantly pulled all of Ron's attention away. At last, he had finally found a living person in this town. But the moment Ron loosened his grip, the squirrel shot straight back onto the old man's shoulder. The man then introduced himself as the mayor of Winterless Town. What surprised Ron even more was that the old man already knew he had come here to uncover the truth. From the mayor, Ron learned that this place used to feel like spring all year round, and the townspeople had once lived peaceful and happy lives. Then the evil god appeared and destroyed everything. The evil god was a bizarre existence that could grant wishes and bestow power. Those fanatics, driven mad by greed for that power, actually implanted the evil god into their own bodies. In exchange, they gained flames and monstrous strength, but lost their sanity completely. One after another, the townspeople were infected by the evil god, and those monsters still wearing human skin began slaughtering each other in a frenzy. In order to correct that terrible mistake, the mayor had no choice but to seek help from the mage tower. From there, he borrowed a powerful magic scroll. In the end, he cast that spell and froze the entire town solid, along with every infected person inside it, because he knew that if he didn't do it, the disaster wouldn't stop with the town. It would spread across the whole territory. At last, the truth had fully come to light, and the culprit was standing right in front of Ron. Without hesitation, Ron pulled out a rope, tied up the mayor's hands, and prepared to bring him back to Lady Mercury to report mission complete. The mayor looked as though he still had more he wanted to say, but Ron didn't care. His job was simply to capture the culprit, just when he thought this mission was going to end far more easily than expected. The two of them followed the road leading out of town, only to discover that they had somehow circled right back to the center of it. The mayor could only explain bitterly, "This place has been under the overwhelming influence of that spell for far too long. Time here has already fallen completely into chaos. Anyone who learns the truth can no longer leave this place." and I myself have already been trapped here for centuries. Hearing that, Ron was completely dumbfounded. How could it turn out like this? There was still a cute maid and a beautiful dragon girl waiting for him outside. But at the same time, there was one more thing that left him deeply confused. Then how have you managed to stay alive here for hundreds of years? The mayor answered in a low voice, because I was cursed by that magic. In this frozen time, I can never die. All I can do is keep dragging out this miserable existence. But you're different. If you can't find a way out of this town, you'll end up trapped here too, just like all the others, waiting for death. But Ron had absolutely no intention of accepting that fate. In the very next second, he spun around and set off to search for an exit out of the town once again. Early the next morning, Lillian stood inside the cabin, staring out the window in silence, lost in thought. Beside her, Morna kept lightly tapping the glass, her little face full of unease. Just as disappointment was settling over him, Lillian pushed a serving cart into the room. She had already prepared breakfast, corn chowder with white bread, along with bacon, eggs, and roasted leeks. Ron's eyes lit up at once, as expected of an all-purpose dragon maid, beautiful and insanely capable. Seeing that, Lillian softly asked, "What's wrong, Miss Witch?" But Morna still couldn't speak, so all she could do was gesture anxiously with her hands. Using her mind-reading ability, Lillian understood what was bothering her and gently stroked her hair. Then she comforted her in a quiet voice, "Don't worry. Mr. Ron is a transmigrator. He won't go down that easily." Even so, seeing how worried Morna looked, Lillian herself couldn't help furrowing her brows as she thought to herself, "Mr. Ron hasn't come back since he entered yesterday. What exactly happened inside?" Meanwhile, time kept slipping away. Ron had already wandered around the town for a full 10 days, only to end up returning to the exact same spot every single time. The system's response was just as frustrating. It claimed it could do nothing for now and needed more detailed information before it could analyze the situation. That made Ron snap in anger. What's the point of having a useless system like you if you can't do anything when it actually matters? Just then, the mayor slowly stepped out of the house. Seeing how stubborn Ron still was, he invited him inside to warm himself by the fire and rest for a bit. The moment Ron entered, he immediately asked whether there was any way out, but the mayor told him to give up on that thought. No matter how hard he searched, he would never find an exit. At that moment, Ron's eyes happened to fall on several picture frames sitting on a cabinet. In the photos, besides the mayor, there was also a woman and a little boy. Out of curiosity, Ron asked, "What happened to your family?" In a low voice, the mayor explained that before the town was frozen by magic, his wife had fled with most of the others. After all these centuries, she had almost certainly passed away outside long ago. As for his son, he was dead too. Hearing that, Ron genuinely felt a pang in his chest and said, "That's rough. If it were me, being stuck here alone for that long, I probably would have lost it a long time ago." But what surprised him was the mayor's reply. "I stayed here of my own will as an act of atonement. After all, there's endless food here, broken things repair themselves, and I can quietly spend the rest of my life in this place." The moment he heard that, Ron mocked him without holding back. "You really are selfish. You can stay here and never die. But I can die. I still have to get back and enjoy my lord life with the girls waiting for me." But the mayor suddenly burst out with emotion. "You don't understand what I've sacrificed over these 100 years. I've endured endless loneliness, and I even sacrificed my own son by freezing him in the ice with my own hands. In order to keep those monsters from escaping, I even killed the outsiders who tried to break the magic." Hearing that made Ron's spine go cold. "Mayor, have you gone insane? Have you been trapped here so long that you've thrown away even the most basic piece of your humanity?" But the mayor only grew more agitated. "Why can none of you be like me? Is it wrong to sacrifice yourself in order to stop the monsters from spreading?" Ron answered with a cold sneer. "The kind of people I hate most are the ones who force everyone else to sacrifice themselves too." The mayor shouted back as if he were completely justified. "It was a necessary sacrifice. I'm the one who saved everyone else." In the next second, Ron stepped forward and grabbed the mayor by the collar, roaring, "Stop hiding behind the word salvation. You're just terrified of facing your own mistake and terrified of facing your son." The moment those words landed, the mayor fell silent. A second later, Ron slowly let go of him. Then he said in a firm voice, "You can stay trapped inside your delusion if you want, but I'm going to find a way out of here." The mayor stared at him with a complicated look in his eyes and asked in a low voice, "Are you truly certain you want to leave? No matter what price you have to pay?" Ron answered without even a moment of hesitation, "Yes, I'm leaving this place no matter what." After hearing that unwavering reply, the mayor seemed to come to some kind of conclusion. "Maybe you have more courage than I do when it comes to facing those people." Then he reached up and gently stroked the white squirrel on his shoulder. After that, he looked at Ron and said, "Follow the little one." In the very next second, the squirrel lightly jumped onto Ron. The mayor then explained, "It'll lead you to the magical core that froze this entire town. There, you'll find the answer you're looking for." Ron followed the little squirrel through the streets, weaving deeper and deeper into a part of town he'd never reached before. And the farther in he went, the denser the frozen statues around him became, each one locked in the exact posture of its final moment in life. making the whole place feel even more eerie. Then, all of a sudden, the little squirrel stopped and let out several sharp squeaks toward the front. Ron immediately looked in the direction it was pointing. There, right ahead of him, was the energy core of the entire magic formation. And standing at the very center of that core was an especially towering ice statue. Ron instinctively stepped closer to take a better look, only to realize that the figure looked strikingly similar to the person in the mayor's photograph. A magic scroll was clutched tightly in its hand, while on the left side of its chest, there was an enraged, demonic face embedded in the flesh. Right then, the system warned Ron that tearing up that magic scroll would lift the frozen seal over the entire area, but strongly advised him not to do it. The reason was simple. Inside the ice statue was an evil god larva, and removing the spell would cause it to fully awaken. At Ron's current level of strength, there was no way he could defeat something like that. The system added that, given enough time, it could forge Ron into the strongest being on the surface world during this period, and once that happened, wiping them out and escaping would be easy. But right at that moment, the scroll in the statue's hand suddenly slipped free on its own without any warning. With a sharp smack, it hit the ground. The sight left Ron completely dumbfounded. His body bent down almost on instinct to pick it up, but the instant his fingers touched the scroll, a strange and horrifying vision suddenly flooded into his mind. In that vision, he tore the magic scroll apart with his own hands. Then the entire ice statue fully awakened. In the next instant, it punched straight through his chest from behind, while the system coldly issued a warning. Parallel resonance without system protection is strictly prohibited. When Ron snapped back to himself, he found that his body was still perfectly unharmed. The ice statue was also still standing there in complete silence. Only then did the system explain, what you just witnessed was a possible future outcome. If you destroy the scroll, you won't ever be able to return to this world. Cold sweat instantly poured down Ron's back, and he hurriedly placed the scroll back into the statue's hand with extreme care. But strangely enough, the moment the scroll returned, cracks began spreading across the statue's icy surface in huge numbers. It turned out that the evil god larva's power was so strong that it was forcibly accelerating the awakening of its host. Even the ice coating the scroll itself shattered apart in that same moment. Ron's first instinct was to turn and run for his life, but by then it was already too late. In the next second, a blond man slowly opened his eyes, and the oppressive pressure rolling off him was enough to make breathing difficult. Once he learned that Ron was an outsider from beyond the town, the corners of his lips twisted into a strange smile. Congratulations. You've witnessed my awakening. As a reward, I can grant you divine grace and let you become one of us. The moment Ron imagined himself ending up with a demonic face embedded in his chest just like that man, he awkwardly scratched his head and rejected the offer with a dry laugh. Yeah, I think I'll pass. Girls definitely aren't going to like that kind of look. It would ruin my chances completely. Instantly, the smile vanished from the blond man's face. He said coldly, "What a pity. Since you refuse to embrace the god, then you'll become nourishment instead." The second he finished speaking, his fist slammed brutally into Ron's stomach. Ron spat out a mouthful of blood on the spot. His entire body was blasted backward through the air. Then he crashed violently into the stone wall behind him, the impact making it feel like every bone in his body was about to come apart. Ron struggled desperately, trying to force himself back up, but in the next instant, the man seized his throat with one ice-cold hand. Even worse, when death was right in front of him, the system was utterly useless. It could neither take emergency control of his body, nor give him any power. Ron was lifted high into the air by that blond man with one hand, and it looked like he was seconds away from being strangled to death. Then, at the very last moment, the mayor's voice rang out from behind them. "Darien, stop." Once Darien turned around and saw who it was, he immediately hurled Ron to the ground and let out a mocking laugh. "So it's you, my dear father, the mayor." It was only after hearing their exchange that Ron finally understood the truth of what had happened back then. The mayor had secretly implanted the evil god into his own son, Darien, then tricked him into activating the scroll, which led to the entire town being frozen. The moment he learned that, Darien let out a furious roar. In the next instant, his fist punched straight through the mayor's chest. Then he raised his left foot, ready to crush him to death on the spot. Seeing that, Ron shouted at once, "Move your foot." Only then did Darien realize, with surprise, that Ron was somehow still alive. And in that split second of distraction, Ron threw every ounce of strength he had into a punch aimed straight at Darien's face. But the result felt like punching a slab of steel. Darien casually wiped at his face, his expression darkening. "Looks like that scroll is still suppressing my strength. Otherwise, trash like you would never have been able to scratch me." Then he activated his magic and raised a hand. The sealing scroll that had fallen to the ground instantly flew back into his grasp. Darien's face twisted with excitement. "Once I destroy this completely, all my power will be unleashed." The very moment the scroll was torn apart, the system instantly issued Ron a warning. The freezing magic seal has been lifted. All evil god larvae are about to awaken. At the same time, the villagers who had been trapped in ice began moving again, their stiff limbs cracking loudly as low growls rose one after another. Darien threw his head back and laughed. "I'll kill you first, then leave my kin out of this place." And right then, the evil god larva inside him had already evolved into its second stage. The system immediately informed Ron that his current survival rate had dropped below 7%. Just as Darien's fist came crashing toward him, Ron barely twisted aside in time. The shockwave from that blow blasted a huge hole into the wall behind him. Ron instantly used the spreading dust and debris to hide his movements. Then he slipped behind a nearby wall. But right at that moment, the system abruptly announced, because the host's survival rate is too low, this transmigrator cultivation attempt is now automatically judged a failure. Ron raged inwardly. "You useless garbage system, you're giving up on your host this fast? Weren't you the one saying you'd turn me into the strongest existence alive?" To his shock, the system immediately issued a brand new mission. Kill 12 evil god larvae. Completion reward, physical ability enhancement. If the host dies, the system's resulting energy shockwave will be sufficient to eliminate these evil god larvae. Looking at that mission window, Ron nearly blacked out. The system was obviously telling him to go die. He couldn't even beat one, and now it wanted 12. But at this point, he had no one to rely on except himself. So Ron started attempting parallel resonance, because that was how he had glimpsed possible futures before. At once, the system sent out an extremely severe warning. "Transmigrator, cease parallel resonance immediately. Please value your life and stop engaging in behavior that may lead to self-destruction. Your dangerous actions are interfering with system operation and causing malfunction." In the next second, countless clocks began spinning wildly inside Ron's mind. He then saw vision after vision of himself being killed by Darien over and over again. Every possible death looked horrifyingly painful. But in every parallel outcome, Darien instinctively protected the evil god larva inside his body. That had to be his weakness. Unfortunately, Darien had already found Ron's hiding place. In desperation, Ron grabbed up a handful of ice and snow and hurled it straight at Darien's face. The moment Darien instinctively raised his arm to block it, Ron seized the chance and charged in. He aimed to destroy the evil god larva with a single punch. But instead, Darien effortlessly caught his wrist. With a vicious grin, Darien said, "You didn't actually think I had no guard up around here, did you?" In the next instant, an overwhelming force surged from Darien's palm straight into Ron's body. Ron felt as if every inch of him was being burned alive from the inside out. At the same time, far away at the camp, Morna suddenly knocked over the cup in her hands. In the very next second, she bolted toward the door like she had lost her mind. Lillian immediately chased after her and grabbed her by the hand. "Miss Morna, the blizzard outside is too strong. Stay here and wait for Lord Ron to come back." But Morna was already crying so hard that tears were streaming down her face. She kept trying to speak, yet the words just wouldn't come out clearly. Lillian could only place a hand on her shoulder, a softer tone. "Miss Morna, calm down. If you're like this, I can't read what you're trying to say. Just say it slowly." Morna took a deep breath as she forced her voice through that invisible wall holding it back. At last, she managed to say a full sentence. "Lord Ron is in danger. I need to find him." The moment she heard that, shock flashed across Lillian's face. It was the first time she had ever heard Morna speak in a complete sentence. But she recovered almost immediately and said, "I understand. Then I'll take you to him." Meanwhile, on the other side, Darien's foot was already planted heavily on Ron's chest. With a vicious look, he sneered. "Did you really think some cheap little trick would be enough to beat me? There's a limit to how much you can look down on someone." "Or what? Are you planning to become some foolish hero like that old man too?" Coughing up blood, Ron still forced out a shout. "You got it wrong. I never wanted to be some hero. I just want to live a happy life surrounded by cute girls." But right then, a blurry black figure suddenly appeared beside Ron, and its voice exploded directly inside his mind. "Exactly. This dying, rotten world doesn't need you to save it. What you should do is use your power to drive one more brutal dose into it." Seeing that Ron had basically lost the strength to resist, Darien raised his fist and smashed it down toward Ron's head. But to everyone's shock, the Ron who had looked moments away from death suddenly raised a hand and caught that killing blow head on. Gritting his teeth, he forced himself back upright. At the same time, a savage, violent power burst out from deep inside his body. Darien had no idea what was happening, but the evil god larva inside him clearly reacted with instinctive fear toward that power. Furious, he threw another punch and roared, "What the hell did you do?" Ron snapped his head aside and dodged. At the same time, he gathered that raging power into his left hand and drove it forward like lightning straight into Darien's chest. In the very next second, he ripped the evil god larva right out of Darien's body. And hanging from the end of it was a heart that was still twitching. Darien dropped to the ground with a heavy thud. But the evil god larva in Ron's hand suddenly let out a cold, mocking laugh. "Lowly human, you cannot harm me in the slightest." Ron only answered with a cold smile. "Funny thing is, I'm not a human from this world." Then he clenched all 5 fingers tight and crushed that heart in a single brutal motion. The evil god larva instantly lost all signs of life. Right after that, a strange purple smoke began seeping out through the gaps between Ron's fingers. He immediately flung it away, not expecting that even in death the thing would still try to scheme against him. Even so, it still managed to leave behind a mark on his palm, one shaped exactly like an eye. Not far away, the mayor, who should have already been dead, suddenly struggled back to his feet. It turned out that the time magic binding Winterless Town had not truly been lifted, and the source of that magic was none other than the White Squirrel. The mayor then entrusted Ron with authority over the White Squirrel. And as for whether that magic would continue to be maintained, the final decision was now left entirely to Ron. At the very end of his life, the mayor made one last request. After a brief silence, Ron chose to grant it and drag him over beside Darien. By then, Darien's body had already reverted into a gaunt, shriveled shell, and the only things left in his eyes as he looked at his father were sorrow and release. The mayor, now weeping like a broken old father, choked out, "I'm sorry, Darien. It was my selfishness that ruined you. You must have been so lonely all these years, my son. Don't be afraid. This time, your father will go with you." As he spoke, he held his son's hand tightly and lay there beside him in the endless snow and ice. And as long as Ron removed the time magic, he would finally be able to leave this town for good. But right then, the White Squirrel suddenly started yanking hard his hair. It was clearly trying to force his attention forward. In the next second, a completely unfamiliar beautiful girl suddenly appeared before his eyes. Ron rubbed his eyes hard, confirmed that this was not some hallucination, and immediately demanded to know who she was and why she had shown up out of nowhere at a time like this. The girl casually introduced herself as Ron's mentor. She explained that because Ron had recklessly triggered parallel resonance earlier, the system had briefly crashed, and that gave her a rare chance to appear before him. Then she smugly added, "Not every transmigrator gets lucky enough to meet me, you know? You'd better treasure this chance. If I, the logistics minister, happen to be in a good mood, I might even tell you how to stay alive in this world." Ron couldn't help snarking back. "Weren't you calling yourself my mentor just a second ago? So why are you suddenly a logistics minister now? Did you already forget your own setting?" The girl only gave him an awkward laugh. "Oops, so you noticed." But by then, Ron had already started forming a guess about her true identity. "You know way too much about the system. That means you were a transmigrator before too, weren't you?" The girl only chuckled. "Transmigrator? Heh, we're all a little too old-fashioned to understand such trendy words." But Ron instantly caught the key part of what she had said. Only then did he realize that the girl in front of him wasn't just a single person. She could become an ordinary-looking middle-aged man, or a sweet and innocent little girl, or take on the form of the beautiful young girl standing before him now. That completely stunned Ron. But the system said all the transmigrators before me were dead. So who exactly are you people? The girl only looked at him with a meaningful smile. "Kid, do you really trust the system that much? Then do you know why it insists on summoning transmigrators in the first place?" Ron instinctively guessed. Because of the outer gods? The girl gave him an approving nod. "Looks like you're not as dumb as you seem. The natives of the bicolor world can't inflict real damage on the outer gods, but transmigrators can. Just like how you crushed that evil god larva a moment ago. So no, the system isn't going to turn you into the strongest warrior, and it certainly isn't trying to make you some hero. It's only forcing you into becoming the kind of tool it wants. In its eyes, your life means nothing." Hearing that, Ron knew deep down that she was right. Earlier, the system had already been ready to discard him the moment his survival rate dropped too low. That so-called overpowered system and all those tempting rewards were never free. There had always been a price attached. But then the girl suddenly changed her tone. "That said, the system isn't completely useless. It can still answer most questions about this world, as long as you learn how to resist it. Whatever happens, you need to keep your own judgment. And never forget this. The reason you become stronger is never because of the system. The real source of that strength is you. Those rewards it gives you are nothing more than the inheritance left behind by the transmigrators before you. The results of everything they fought and died for." But the instant she finished speaking, the frozen villagers around them began waking up on a massive scale. Seeing that, the girl immediately prepared to leave. Ron panicked at once. "You're leaving already? You're not staying to help? Right now, I'm basically just an unarmed, ordinary guy, and the system is useless. How am I supposed to fight this mini evil god larvae?" The girl only smiled lightly. "Before coming here, who wasn't just an ordinary person? If you manage to win once, then you can win a second time too." With that, she waved her hand and pulled up a system panel in front of him. On it, Ron's current status was displayed clearly. Strength evaluation, warrior first rank, Deathbringer first rank. But Ron had no idea what this so-called Deathbringer even meant. Unfortunately, the girl was already preparing to leave, and before she went, she left him with one final line. "Remember this. The true nature of parallel possibilities isn't to turn you into another version of yourself, but to let you share certain things from another self. If you aren't even happy while living, then none of it means anything." Ron hurriedly called out after her, "Then, are we going to meet again?" The girl looked back over her shoulder and smiled. "Not bad. Looks like you finally have confidence that you can leave this place. If you want to see me again, Then go look for other places where time has fallen into chaos. Good luck. The moment her figure completely vanished, the system automatically finished repairing itself and even claimed in a solemn tone, the system will continue serving the host with full dedication from now on. Ron only let out a cold laugh. Really? Then who was it that was ready to throw me away earlier? But no matter what, he still had to finish that damn mission first and kill 11 more evil god larvae. Meanwhile, the villagers were already roaring themselves hoarse as they charged at him like a tidal wave, screaming that they would take his life and avenge their own kind. Seeing that, Ron immediately told the little squirrel on his shoulder to get somewhere safe. Then he drew in a deep breath and began focusing on the strange power of Deathbringer first rank surging inside him. When the closest villager rushed in, Ron drove a punch straight into the evil god larva lodged in the man's abdomen. This time, he didn't even need to rip the larva out. The blow alone was enough to completely extinguish its life. But before Ron could celebrate for even a second, some sneaky bastard of a villager attacked him from behind and smashed a thick wooden club straight into his head. Warm blood instantly ran down from the side of his forehead. Gritting his teeth, Ron swept his leg out and knocked the attacker flat to the ground. Then, in the same motion, he drove his foot down and crushed the evil god larva in that villager's stomach. Even so, that only brought his count to 4. In the next second, 2 burly men clamped down on his arms from both sides. Their raw strength was terrifying, but luckily they could no longer manipulate flames, so all they could do now was restrain him. Then 2 more threw themselves at him and locked onto his legs. After that, more and more villagers piled onto him until he was pinned all the way at the bottom. Ron felt as if his entire body had become unbearably heavy. At that moment, he couldn't help wishing he at least had some kind of weapon in his hands, but the truth was that he had absolutely nothing. Even being able to hurt them somehow would have been enough. Then a savage impulse surged through him, and Ron actually opened his mouth and bit down on the evil god larva in one villager's abdomen. In the next instant, he tore it out by force. At this point, it didn't matter how he killed them. As long as they died, that was enough. Not far away, in an empty open patch of snow, the white squirrel quietly watched it all, becoming the sole witness to this bloody fight to the death. Ron didn't even know how much time had passed, but by the time his senses cleared, all that remained around him was a field of corpses, and the mission to kill 12 evil god larvae had finally been completed. But to his disbelief, even more villagers were still rushing toward him, and the system was actually urging him to keep fighting. Ron was so furious, he nearly cursed it out loud. This garbage system was insane. The mission had clearly said 12, and only 12. But by now, his stamina had already reached its limit, and blood loss along with sheer exhaustion made his vision start to sway. Was he really going to die here after all? Just as darkness was about to swallow the last of his consciousness, a dragon's roar tore down from the sky above. Ron forced himself to look up and saw an enormous, giant, white dragon hovering in the air with its wings spread wide. There was no way he could mistake that beautiful yet overwhelming presence. It was Lillian. Meanwhile, high on the broad back of the giant white dragon, Morna was anxiously peering down below. The moment she spotted Ron, she immediately cried out in excitement. Lord Ron is down there. In her dragon form, Lillian drew in a deep breath. In the very next second, dragon breath packed with extreme ice magic poured downward like a crashing waterfall. Instantly, the crazed villagers rushing below, along with the evil god larvae inside them, were all frozen solid into towering ice statues. Ron slowly pushed himself back up, ready to jump into the fight again, but couldn't help saying, "Thanks, Lillian. You seriously saved me there." The next moment, he clenched his fist and started smashing into those immobilized ice statues. Before long, corpses were scattered all across the ground. The system quickly popped up with a notification, 23 evil god larvae eliminated. Only then did Ron finally let out a breath. This damn mission was over at last, and completely drained, he collapsed onto the ground to rest. The moment Lillian shifted back into her human form, Morna immediately rushed toward Ron in excitement. "Lord Ron." She threw herself straight into his arms, making Ron grimace in pain on the spot. "Easy, easy." But right after that, he stared at her in shock. "Morna, you can actually talk now." Morna lifted her little face, blushing faintly as she whispered, "Because I was so worried about Lord Ron." Off to the side, Lillian looked at the corpses littering the area and frowned deeply. Why were all of these people implanted with evil gods? What exactly happened here? So Ron briefly explained everything. Winterless Town had been sealed by the mayor's magic, and the source of the entire disaster had been that white squirrel. As for Ron himself, he had been trapped here and ultimately forced into a life-and-death struggle against those monsters. After hearing that, Lillian finally understood. No wonder. The moment I stepped into this town, I sensed at least 10 ranks worth of magical power. Yet from the outside, there wasn't a trace of anything abnormal. Then she added, "Power in the bicolor world is measured by ranks. Rank 10 is considered master level, and anything above rank 15 is regarded as legendary. As for me, I'm only at rank 9 right now." As she finished speaking, Lillian carefully studied Ron again and thought to herself, when this human first arrived, he was barely worth noticing. But now he's already capable of killing this many evil gods on his own. His growth is even faster than I expected. Right then, Morna suddenly noticed the strange brand in Ron's palm. Ron only smiled and reassured her. It's fine. It doesn't hurt at all. Lillian quickly gathered her thoughts again and said, Mr. Ron, now that you've resolved the problem in Winterless Town, let's return and meet Lady Mercury. So Ron asked the white squirrel to release the magic maintaining the entire town. With a low, humming sound, the magic crystal inside the squirrel suddenly shattered, losing its ability to provide magic any longer. In the next instant, the ice and snow blanketing the area vanished all at once, and sunlight broke through the clouds to pour down. Feeling that long-lost warmth, Morna finally smiled. The sunlight, it's so warm, and at that exact moment, the little squirrel that had completed its mission reached the end of its life as well. At the same time, far away on the other side, the little silver dragon was suddenly lit up by the sunlight pouring in through the window. It excitedly looked outside and shouted, Lady Mercury, the sun's come out over the territory. You can even see the shattered ring of truth now. Even Lady Mercury hadn't expected Ron to complete the mission this quickly. But the little silver dragon immediately started grumbling. If that damned outer god Vandal hadn't smashed the ring of truth, none of this would have turned into such a headache. Even so, Lady Mercury herself still had no real answer yet for how Vandal should be dealt with. The moment she sensed Ron and the others were about to return, the little silver dragon instantly jumped into a water cup and hid its form completely. Right after that, the door was pushed open and Ron entered together with Morna and Lillian. Sitting elegantly in her chair, Lady Mercury calmly spoke first. Welcome back, Mr. Ron. It seems you handled things rather smoothly. Ron immediately shot back in irritation. What do you mean, smooth? I almost died in there. But Lady Mercury paid no attention to his complaint at all. What actually surprised her was that Ron had uncovered the truth in only 4 days. In her original estimate, it should have taken him at least 2 months to get anywhere. With visible interest, she asked, so then, who exactly was the one responsible for freezing that entire territory? Ron answered honestly without hiding anything. It was the mayor of Winterless Town. He froze the whole town to keep the monsters infected by the evil god from getting out. As for the other parts of your territory, they were probably just caught in the spillover. The mayor died afterward. I already buried him. Lady Mercury, however, clearly had no intention of accepting his story based on his word alone. Ron had already expected that, so he immediately took out the damaged magic scroll. Then he tossed it onto the table in front of her. That's your evidence. Lady Mercury didn't respond right away. She simply stared at the scroll in silence, clearly weighing how much of Ron's story she believed. Then, to Ron's surprise, Lillian suddenly spoke up for him. Mr. Ron isn't lying. I saw with my own eyes that he was surrounded by a large number of evil god believers, and in the end, he was the one who dealt with them. Ron clearly hadn't expected Lillian to back him up. His heart warmed at once, and for a second, he even felt like maybe she had started seeing him as a real friend. He immediately gave her a thumbs up in thanks. But Lady Mercury's gaze soon shifted to the mark on Ron's other hand. That's the mark of an evil god. She quickly reached her own conclusion. It seemed the evil god had already marked Ron as a dangerous target. As for the other things he was hiding, she decided they weren't important enough to matter right now. After a brief moment of thought, Lady Mercury's graceful smile returned. Then she said, since you completed the mission so well, I'll naturally honor my promise. As she spoke, she spread out a sheet of parchment. The Norman Empire has already agreed to let me grant that territory to you. All you need to do is take this document there. The moment you sign your name on it, the lands around Windbird Town will officially become yours. Ron took the document and gave a quick glance. The next second, he slammed a hand against the table in outrage. I risked my life and killed more than 20 evil god larvae, and all you're giving me is one tiny town? But once Lady Mercury explained the real value behind it, Ron's attitude changed instantly. The wasteland around Windbird Town was filled with mineral veins, and if he could develop it properly, the territory would become a gold mine for him. Sure, there was still a gamble involved, but Ron ultimately signed his name without hesitation. However, when he asked how exactly he was supposed to get to his new territory, Lady Mercury told him that the teleportation gate was malfunctioning. At most, it could only send them back to the place where they had first met, and the exact location of the territory would have to be found by them on their own. Smiling all the while, she stamped the official seal onto the parchment and said, surely a tiny little issue like that won't trouble a newly appointed lord such as yourself. Ron took the document with a bitter smile, but inwardly he had already seen through her. Sending him back to the place where they first met meant returning him to the city where he was still wanted by everyone. This dragon woman clearly just wanted to enjoy the show. Then, just before they were about to leave, Lady Mercury casually mentioned that if Lillian wished to continue working for Ron from now on, all he had to do was pay her wages. Ron immediately turned toward Lillian in shock. I thought you hated humans, so why do you want to keep following me? Lillian lowered herself into a maid's bow, so perfect it looked effortless. It would be my honor to continue serving you, Mr. Ron. Seeing that, Ron instantly stroked his chin and deliberately put on the airs of a lord. Now that I think about it, I really do need a maid around. Since you're being this sincere, I guess I'll graciously accept you. But from now on, you'll address me as master, and whatever I say, you do. The second he saw the smug look on Ron's face, Lillian clenched her teeth in anger and very nearly started regretting the decision already. Meanwhile, Lady Mercury had also noticed that Morna had fully awakened, and she immediately became interested in recruiting her as well. The second Ron heard that, he pulled Morna behind him and shouted, "You're not stealing my witch." Morna tightly wrapped herself around his arm and answered Lady Mercury without hesitation. Not interested. That answer drew a faint look of regret from Lady Mercury. Right after that, she prepared to send the three of them back to where they had come from. At the same time, a teleportation circle quietly appeared on the new walls of Berlikiu in the holy nation of Vandal. But the moment Ron pushed the door open, he realized they had somehow been sent right back to this cursed place again. In the next second, Morna suddenly grabbed his sleeve and pointed at the wall in shock. "Lord Ron, look, one of the people in that picture looks like you, and the other one looks like me." Ron followed her finger with a helpless look, only to find wanted posters of the two of them plastered across the wall. And the drawings were so wildly based on pure stereotype that they barely counted as portraits at all. The surrounding walls were covered in the same notices too. Ron could only sigh and tell her, "Silly girl, that's not some painting. Those are wanted posters for the two of us." Lillian gave them a casual glance and seemed more curious about what kind of outrageous crime Ron had committed to earn a bounty of 50,000 gold coins. Ron only shrugged and answered lazily, "Nothing much. I just openly declared war against the god they worship. That's all." Right then, a patrolling guard carrying a torch came walking over from the distance. And after just one look, he immediately recognized the three of them as the people from the posters. Ron could only mutter under his breath, "Honestly, the fact that you recognized us from that mess is kind of impressive." Lillian, on the other hand, stayed perfectly calm. She simply gathered a bead of water in her palm and flicked it at the guard. He dropped to the ground on the spot. Ron jumped in alarm. "What are you doing?" Lillian answered with complete composure. "I only wanted him to be quiet." But the other guards nearby had already noticed the disturbance, and the sound of hurried, chaotic footsteps rapidly closed in. Ron gave Lillian a thumbs up through clenched teeth. "See? Now you've dragged even more of them over here." Lillian, of course, saw it differently and calmly assumed the real reason was Ron yelling so loudly in the first place. Ron gave up arguing and immediately grabbed Morna by the hand. "Forget it. We run first." But before they could get very far, the road ahead had already run out, and by then, the guards had completely surrounded them from every direction. Sweat broke out on Ron's forehead as he turned to Lillian and asked, "Miss Lillian, what do you think we do now?" Lillian answered with refreshing honesty, "If I transform back into my dragon form, then getting out of here alone would actually be very easy." Ron's eyes lit up at once. "Then why not just carry us and fly us out with you?" But the moment she heard that, Lillian covered her mouth and looked physically sick. "Mr. Ron, both physically and mentally, I can't accept allowing you to ride on my dragon back." Ron nearly ground his teeth to dust. At a time like this, that's what you're worried about. By then, the guards had already completely lost patience and charged in like madmen, determined to execute these so-called heretics on the spot. Two guards lunged first with spears. Ron immediately shoved Morna to a relatively safer corner. Then he bent low and barely dodged the spear tips. In the same motion, he burst forward. Reaching out with both hands, he seized the two guards by their helmets and smashed their heads together with all his strength. The two collapsed instantly. But before Ron could even catch his breath, a sly guard darted in, grabbed Morna, and pressed a cold blade against her throat. Her arms were pinned so tightly that she couldn't struggle free at all. And at the exact moment Ron's focus broke, two more guards from behind swung their swords straight at him. He barely dodged the first strike in a clumsy scramble. The second one still sliced across his arm. Blood immediately poured out from the wound. At that sight, even Lillian's brows drew tight, and she couldn't help calling out, "Mr. Ron?" There was unmistakable worry in her voice now. And Morna cried out in a trembling voice, "Lord Ron." In that instant, countless memories flashed through her mind all at once. It had been Ron who pulled her out of that black sludge state. Ron who gave shelter to someone hated by everyone and left with nowhere to go. Ron who had protected her, cared for her, and looked after her all this time. And for the first time, a fierce determination rose in Maruna's heart. She wanted to be strong the way Ron was. She wanted to protect him too. With endless fury and resolve erupting from inside her, Morna unleashed a burst of power and shouted, "No one gets to hurt Lord Ron." In that very instant, a violent force blasted all the surrounding guards away. Ron stared in complete shock. What the hell was happening? Then, without warning, a torrential downpour crashed out of the night sky and snuffed out every torch the guards were carrying. Stranger still, even though Morna was dressed in such thin clothes, not a single drop of rain touched her. The falling rain transformed into tiny, crystal-clear fish the moment it neared her, circling around her with graceful, fluid motion. In that storm-dark night, Morna looked less like a girl and more like a true spirit of water. One of the guards pointed at Morna in terror and shouted, "It's the witch! Stop her now!" But Morna merely lifted a hand with calm control, guiding the little fish made of rainwater. In the very next second, those water fish shot forward like cannon shells. The guard's armor, which should have been solid steel, was pierced as easily as wet paper. In an instant, every last guard collapsed to the ground. The sight left Ron staring in complete disbelief. One move, and she dropped all of them? Lillian's voice then sounded from the side, as expected of a witch of water. Her power is already so great that she can call wind and rain, even alter the weather itself. At the same time, Ron also noticed something else. Somehow, this dragon girl had already opened an umbrella. He couldn't help asking where she had even gotten it from. Lillian took one look at his drenched body, then casually produced another umbrella, as if by magic, and handed it over. Meeting every need of one's employer is simply the most basic quality of a maid. Ron opened the umbrella and looked toward Morna. Sure enough, she was already staring back at him, her eyes filled with expectation. It was obvious she wanted praise. So Ron walked over, gently patted her hair, and said with a smile, "You did amazing, Morna." The moment she heard that, Maruna's whole face lit up with happiness. Then Ron glanced at the fallen guards and said at once, "Since the guards are down, we need to get out of the city before reinforcements arrive." But right then, a sharp, shrieking sound suddenly cut through the air above them, and both Ron and Lillian looked up at the same time. A powerful arrow was shooting down from the top of the tower. The one it was aimed at was Morna. Ron's face changed instantly, and he shouted for her to watch out. At the last possible instant, Lillian's hand transformed into a dragon claw and caught the arrow barehanded. Maruna's little face turned pale from fright. But Ron's eyes lit up for a completely different reason. He stared at Lillian's claw in excitement. That claw is insanely cool. A moment later, the panicked shouting of guards came from the tower above. "Quick, knock another arrow. Aim better this time." Ron finally started feeling some real panic himself. The open ground around them offered nowhere to hide. But Lillian only clicked her tongue in annoyance. What irritating insects! And she tightened her grip around the arrow. In the next instant, she hurled it right back the way it came. The arrow slammed into the tower with terrifying force, and a miserable scream erupted from the firing slit. Ron couldn't help blurting out his admiration right away. "That's insane. Seriously, you really are an all-purpose dragon maid." At that point, Lillian slowly spread the dragon wings on her back and said, "It's time for us to leave." Then her body transformed once more into a massive white dragon, radiating raw majesty and overwhelming pressure. Looking down at the two of them, she said, "Get on." Morna obediently climbed on her back. Ron, on the other hand, looked thrilled beyond words. "So, you finally decided to carry us out? I've been wanting to know what riding on a dragon feels like this whole time." But in the next second, Lillian's dragon claw simply reached down, grabbed Ron by the body, and lifted him straight into the air. A terrible feeling instantly rose in Ron's chest. "Wait, you're not actually planning to..." Before he could even finish, Lillian had already spread her wings and launched straight into the sky. Suspended helplessly in her claw, Ron let out a scream loud enough to tear the heavens open. The difference in treatment here is way too obvious. 1 week later, early in the morning, a carriage finally brought Ron and the others to the border region of the Norman Empire, the living burial plain. Inside the carriage, Lillian and Morna were leaning against each other, sleeping peacefully. Ron, on the other hand, was bored out of his mind and couldn't help complaining. "This carriage has been rolling along for days, and everything around us still looks dead and barren. Is there really nothing even remotely interesting out here?" Just as he was getting restless and trying to find something to do, the system suddenly popped up and reminded him that he still had unclaimed rewards. One of them turned out to be the reward from the earlier mission to uncover the culprit behind Winterless Village, and the system could provide him with a personal weapon. The moment Ron heard that, his eyes lit up. "Then make it something I'd actually like. I want it to look cool as hell, the kind of weapon that scares people the second they see it." In the end, the system created for him the Ash of the Forged Greatsword. It had been forged from rare metals found around the Myriad Crucible. The original design goal had been to create a weapon capable of transforming its shape, but the final product failed to gain that function. Even so, it still possessed the ability to prevent enemy regeneration, while also granting its wielder a certain degree of resistance to fire. Ron took one look at the greatsword and instantly fell for it. It was exactly his kind of weapon, so he made up his mind on the spot and chose it without hesitation. The system then informed him that the weapon had already been placed in the system storage and could be retrieved at any time. The other reward, still waiting to be claimed, was the physical enhancement potion from the mission to kill the evil god larvae. According to the system, the potion was originally a product of some advanced warrior mass production project. Drinking it could significantly improve the body's physical condition, but repeated use on the same person would not stack or work again. More importantly, the potion was currently monopolized by a certain family and reserved exclusively for internal use. Looking at the potion in front of him, Ron immediately felt tempted. His biggest weakness right now was clearly his stamina and physical strength, so he told the system to hand it over right away. In the next instant, the potion appeared directly in his hand. Ron didn't overthink it. He twisted the cap open and started chugging the whole thing down. Halfway through, he nearly spat it right back out. And only then did the system lazily add that the potion's side effect was that it tasted absolutely horrible. After a while, Ron couldn't help demanding, "You didn't give me some fake garbage, did you?" I drank the whole thing, and nothing changed. The system calmly explained, "The potion requires 1 week to fully digest. The host body will strengthen gradually during that time. Please trust the quality of system-produced items." Just then, Lillian and Morna woke up. Seeing his strange expression, Lillian asked what had happened, to which Ron waved a hand and laughed bitterly. "Nothing. I just accidentally drank something disgusting." After that, the three of them continued on their way toward Windbird Town.